Madison, we're back with another podcast, and this one we did together. Abby and Connor, they have a production company, A2C, so without further ado, let's get to it.
It was good.
Well, Abby and Connor, welcome to the Inqua podcast. I've got Madison here, a new co-host, but longtime writer for Inqua magazine. Let's start off with you guys. How do you know each other? When did you first meet?
We've known each other for a little over 2 years, and we met through a mutual friend at my acting studio, Crash Acting, here in LA. I had been in LA for about 4 months, and I was looking to produce and create my own short film from start to finish. And I kind of announced this in class, and I said I was looking for a producer, somebody who kind of knew it already and could show me like the arc of what I was trying to get involved with. And this guy introduced Connor and we got lunch, and I kind of pitched Connor this idea, which at the time I didn't really know the scope of what I was trying to do. And we've been working together ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. And had you both been in LA for a while?
So Abby had only lived there for 6 months, something like that. And I had been living in LA for about 5 or 6 years at that point. I moved here in 2017. So I had a good little stint already in Los Angeles.
When did you first get started in the industry, Connor? Were you already working in film?
Yeah, so I got started, probably back in 14. I started in Austin, Texas, of all places, and kind of worked my way through the scene out there. I was working at a couple of sound stages and hopped on a couple of commercials and things like that, and just kind of was I dropped out of school and, for various number of reasons, and was just trying to navigate how to even start a career. And yeah, I had an old partner that I had moved in with, and we had started, and then eventually in 2017 we both moved to Los Angeles into an artist's commune off of Melrose. So
that's awesome. And what about you, Abby? Did you come to LA to do acting and producing and directing?
So I acted as a child. I acted from the age of 6 to 18, primarily in theater, musical theater, also modeling. And then I went to college for neuroscience, and about halfway through my college degree, I got re-signed for commercial and theatrical talent in San Francisco. And then I was all gung-ho to move down to LA my senior year of college, but I graduated in 2020. So as I graduated, it was the start of the pandemic. So I moved home for a year and a half, and my parents are in Houston, Texas right now. And I actually signed with agents out in Houston who I now absolutely adore and love. And I started working on more film and commercial stuff while I was out there. And then I moved out to LA in, I think, 2022. And yeah, I've been out here ever since just for acting, and then have more recently, over the past 2 years, pivoted into producing and directing.
Having left neuroscience, what you were studying and everything else, and coming over to acting, were there some moments where you thought, I'm doing the wrong thing, or I should go back, or how was that early on?
I mean, I'm not wanting to go back to neuroscience, but there are parts of that world that I really miss. I think one of the main things I miss is having really intellectual conversation with people about something that's totally esoteric. I just don't find a lot of people in LA who are interested in those things, which obviously, but I do find that a lot of the way that I understand how to work and study and get things done is really beneficial in the film industry, because I'm approaching it from a very scientific way to get things finished and researched, and let's make sure we cover all the possible bases. So I miss it in some respects, but I didn't want to be a doctor, and I knew that. Yeah. So
now, both of you having worked in Texas, Connor, do you feel like it helped working outside of LA and coming to LA, or do you think you should have come here first?
That's the tricky question for me. I think it's tough because the LA scene is a lot different than everywhere else, and I think every other state has their own scene. You know what I mean? And I've worked in a couple other states at this point, and definitely very grateful for the experience I had in Texas. I got to be exposed to a lot. When LA is a bit of a monoculture in the film industry, right? It's very, very large. Everybody kind of agrees on what the culture looks like in film. And I think when you go to those smaller markets, it's a little more fractured. So I found that I was working in one kind of circle for, a year or two. And then when I tried to expand into other circles within Texas, even Austin, I would get told that I was doing things wrong, or I didn't know what I was doing. And it's who taught you how to do this? You know what I mean? So there's kind of a weird dissonance that happens there. And when I moved to LA, what I noticed is the experience that I had from Texas basically didn't matter to the people in Los Angeles. And I've kind of heard that from other people too. Like even people who moved from New York have said, "Oh yeah, I basically had to start over when I moved out." Which is weird, because filmmaking should just be filmmaking ultimately, right?
I have a camera operator friend and then another guy who's like a creative executive, and same thing. They came over and restarted a career of 8 years, and it was like, I hadn't realized it was so different place to place.
Yeah, I was an assistant to this producer who was show running this show for Bobcat Goldthwait a couple of years ago. And she moved to LA after 9/11. And she'd been working in New York for, probably 15 years at that point as a producer. You know what I mean? And even she had to start over. And it's like, how? You know what I mean? Like, how have you not earned your stripes at that point to like collectively? It's just so odd.
And you mentioned you would work with the Duplass Brothers. Were they based out in Texas, or was that when you came to LA?
No, they're based out of LA. So I think they graduated from UT.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of opinions on film schools and how they treat their alums and stuff like that. But yeah, they're based out of LA. They're a super cool company, and I love working for them for a number of years. And I've still got a lot of friends who work there and have worked there.
What were some of those lessons you learned from them, HBO, Disney, that you are taking into the production company with you and Abby?
Oh man, working for the Duplass Brothers, you learn a lot. About filmmaking, about kind of boots on the ground filmmaking practically, and really about the kind of filmmaker that you want to be, working, because the company, I think people hear the Duplass Brothers and they think massive, company. And really it's like, I wouldn't call it massive. Like the brothers are coming in, you know what I mean? They're coming into the office and like hanging out and having breakfast. Like and everybody's kind of like just sitting at desks and having coffee together. And it's very communal, and I think the biggest lessons that I learned there that have translated to what we're doing in the company right now have been how to work with a very low budget. And I mean that in the sense of, how to really stretch things and how to make the most with what we have available to us, right? Because that's kind of the Duplass Brothers model is, okay, figure it out. So being kind of resource thin, but creative in execution is pivotal in what we've been doing.
Yeah. And Abby, you started acting. What made you want to do producing and directing? Was that always your goal, or did you want to be just an actor for a while, or what was your plan there?
Well, I had directed things before, but only on stage. I had directed plays and musicals. And actually during the pandemic, I directed or like co-directed a pretty large scale musical and absolutely freaking loved it. I think when I was little, that was always something I wanted to do and kind of was doing, just didn't really know in what avenue I could do it. Because I'm a pretty bossy person. I'm a pretty type A. So like the directing, producing role is like super natural for me. It's like, it makes perfect sense. And I think moving out here, even in the first 6 months, I was getting all these auditions and I was like, okay, this is not the material that is super interesting to me. And like, as someone who came directly from a STEM background like the year before, and I was like taking the MCAT and studying and like working for an oculoplastic surgeon, and like the people I was surrounded with were like predominantly men and like very cut and dry, theologian type intellectual people. And then I would get auditions for like hot girl at bar, and I'm like, all right. Like I'm not a hot girl at bar. Like that is not me. So I was finding this dissonance between like the way that I presented to people and the way that I actually am. So I'm like, maybe I should just write something myself or like direct something myself where I can figure out like, okay, how do I want to be perceived? And then that turned into like, I loved the producing side of it, which I never thought I would, but like being able to tangibly organize people in an actionable way is so satisfying to me. It's like turning in your lab report and getting a 100. I'm like, oh, we organized this project and we like raise money for charity and then it's done. It's so much more actionable than acting, because acting is so much of like a waiting game. But at the same time, to what Connor was saying about coming from Texas, like I work in the Texas market all the time and I love being able to work in different markets. Like as an actor, it totally translates, like no matter where you are. Yeah. And if anything, like coming from LA, I'm like the LA actor they flew in. So you're getting like this false sense of legitimacy and everyone's like, oh, she came from LA. I'm like, I'm just based in LA. Like I just work local hire in Texas. Like there's truly no difference. But yeah, it's kind of opposite as an actor. So that was interesting to hear.
So they get you the salad, the green juice, you're the LA actor. That's kind of nice though, right?
Holding an umbrella.
Yeah, there you go.
Literally, I had a PA holding an umbrella in my last commercial. They're like, get her the umbrella. She needs it. I was like, all right.
Well, I mean, you just mentioned this, and I want to, for our listeners and just for me, the more I've been learning now too, producer seems like such a vague term, and there's so many different types of producers. You see the credit list. Someone could just be offering money. Someone could be doing everything. What is a producer as far as with you guys in your production company? What is the role of a producer?
Gosh, that's unfortunately we have to answer vaguely, right? Because really what we do is everything. And I mean, I would say the majority of our job is making connections, sending out emails, and organizing. That's kind of the majority of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And I think as a producer, that's really I was talking to somebody about this recently, and I think there are different modes that producers can take, obviously, but the biggest one that producers kind of have is that of like a bondsmith. Like we're supposed to kind of forge bonds between people and make those connections to translate onto projects. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's about understanding where everybody is and what connections we can be actively making that are going to be positive for what we want to accomplish and what others want to accomplish as well. So, I mean, Abby has to push me all the time to get really like, we have to go out and socialize and make sure we're reconnecting with people and constantly staying up to date on what people are doing and kind of where they're at and what projects they're looking for and that kind of thing. And so, dipping back into keeping up with everybody, that we know. So,
yeah.
I don't know, Abby, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, a big part of it is we're organizing, we're project leaders, but we're very much on the side of we're creative producers because like we've talked to a couple companies who are interested in working with us and like we can make something from the ground up. Like either we'll write it ourselves, we'll shortlist it ourselves, or we'll find somebody with a script that we like. And then we'll like direct it, we'll create it, Connor will edit it. So like from start to finish, we're like truly producing it. Like we're creating something that didn't exist before. So I think we've met a lot of producers who truly are just like business people, like they're organizers, but I would classify those people as more EPs in my book. Like if you're someone who never touches anything creative and you just organize or sometimes finance, you're an EP financier. And if you're someone who creates something original and organizes people, stays up to date, stays connected, but also creates a project, that's a producer.
Right. Yeah. Going through scripts and making sure things are creatively kind of succinct and then looking at edits and talking to, the creatives that are also on the project, that kind of thing. We actually take a lot of pride in that and the amount of not control, but we want our fingerprint to be on everything that we make creatively. And Abby's a wonderful writer, and I edit all of our shorts that we've made so far and all of our commercials and things like that. And it's really just in an effort to make sure that a piece of us is going out whenever we finish a project.
Which is great. Yeah, your fingerprints on everything. It's not just a business investment. It's a passion. It's
right.
Your creativity is coming out through what you guys are producing.
Right. Well, and we talk about this all the time. If we were just in this for the money, we made a really bad decision. There's a lot better ways to make money. You know what I mean?
Well, talk about that decision to like start your own production company, right? Because like that's not nothing to start your own production company, especially when there are a lot of production companies out there. Like what went into the mindset to be like, we're going to start A2C, we're going to build it from the ground up. Like what was that decision like?
It's like super normal.
It was really normal, actually.
It was like really normal. So Connor and I, and like looking back on this now, we're starting to see that what we did was quite unique because I didn't know, like this was my first foray into like making a short film. So I was like, oh, this is just like how it goes. And we had like a massive journey with our project. We threw a gala and raised tons of money for like charity. We also were, all these newspaper articles. So like looking back now, we kind of set the groundwork for starting a company from the first project that we did because of the number of things we got involved with, like connections we made, articles we were in. Like we created kind of our own public image through one project. And then we were like, we should just keep doing this.
Yeah. So I guess, and to speak more on the specifics of, I think, what went into it, I've been working in LA and in the short film and indie scene for a couple of years at this point. When Abby and I were making the short film Positive, that was the film that we were working on together. And a trend I noticed is typically indie filmmakers would work on one project for about a year and a half or 2 years. And, the final result would be it would go through the film festival circuit and they'd be promoting it for, a year or two. And then that's it. And then at the end of like 2.5 years of work, they have one short film.
Yeah.
And maybe takes them like a year to edit and then another year on the circuit. And then it ends up on Vimeo or YouTube, which sucks because like shorts are wonderful. We really do love short films. And I just found it frustrating that the process couldn't move faster. You know what I mean? That we would be stuck in edits, that we would be hung up on decisions, like small decisions that creatives would be kind of holding the project up with. And Abby is a very big pusher, which is good. It's like she's got this personality that just wants to kind of drive down the line as fast as possible, right? Which is awesome because it gets things done. And that's something that, again, we take a lot of pride in that. Our turnaround time is super fast. So we finished shooting Positive in May, I think, Abby, right?
Yeah.
And we had an edit done by, I want to say July, like a finished kind of completed edit. And we were working on it up until the gala that we threw, which was like just a screening. It was like a charity event for the
Woods Mitchell Pavilion Scholarship.
Yes, that one, the scholarship. Yeah. And we raised a bunch of money for that. And, you know, after that, we were like, do we want to start a nonprofit to keep this going? Like what? And we were just sitting in a Starbucks and we were like, let's just start a production company, I guess. Like, and then we did we filled out most of the paperwork that day in Starbucks. Like,
yeah, we did.
You know?
Wow.
And it was mostly, I think, we like working together. You know, we like the fact that we both are kind of on the same page as far as the speed at which we like to work. And creatively, we're also pretty in sync. So, you know, why not? Right? Ultimately.
A2C inspired by Starbucks.
Yeah.
Put that on the end.
Yeah.
Now, you both had worked on things before. What did you learn about the first few shorts you produced? In addition to the speed, was there some lessons you guys had once you started the production company of, making the first few things?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Abby, do you want to start on this one?
Sure. I mean, so for reference, last year, Connor and I did 4 shorts and a commercial, and Positive was the year before where we did 1 short. And made Positive, and all in all, from start to finish, it was like 8 or 9 months. Yeah. And then last year in 8 or 9 months, we made 5 times the amount of projects. Wow. So I think from that first one, I was like, 8 months. I was like, 8 months is so freaking long. Like, why is this taking so long? And there was so much time being wasted of us giving something to someone and then waiting and working on someone else's time and being like, okay, our editor has taken 3 months to do this, or like our colorist is taking 2 weeks. Like, why are you not answering a phone call? So I think last year, a big thing that we learned was we're going to do as much of the process as possible. Like, we're going to control that. And then whenever we bring anyone else on, we're going to set from the very beginning, this is the time frame. Here's a contract that denotes the time frame. So if you don't get us these deliverables in this time frame, we're working with somebody else. Or like, you no longer have ownership of the thing. So paperwork and time frames, and knowing that like you can get things done that quickly. Because when people say, oh, it'll take me 5 to 10, like, no, it won't. If it's their priority, it'll take them a day.
Yeah. Creatives don't work on a very good schedule. The more people I meet, the more I'm like, if you tell them you have 3 months, they'll do it the night before, 3 months later.
Oh,
that's great.
And frankly, that's kind of the way I work on some things.
Yeah.
So I did, when I was 16, I did the summer program at USC out here for filmmaking. And I had this wonderful professor named Beth Block who said, she had this really great quote. And I'm sure I think she was quoting somebody else, but she said, directors are the voice of creativity and producers are the voice of reason. Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty relevant to what we do. Is we're not only the voice of reason, we're the voice of deadlines. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we're very strict about our deadlines. And I think when we are strict and enforce our deadlines, that makes other people kind of move at a pace they never knew they could move at before, right?
Yeah.
What are the stories you guys are interested in telling as a production company?
The stories that we're interested in telling as a production company, a big part of what we do is working with nonprofits, and that's something that we talked about, like at the kind of the inception of what we were working on with the production company. And so our stories and a lot of all the scripts that we have so far are ones that Abby have written. They tend to revolve around kind of female focused and led stories, kind of coming of age and figuring out pieces of life that are important, and usually revolving around themes that we can attach to a charitable organization in some capacity. Because that's a big part of both of us, is working with charity and working with nonprofits and that kind of thing. I don't know, Abby, you write all the scripts. What do you think?
I don't know. It's hard because I don't think I try to write a specific genre or thing. And honestly, like when I do try to do that, it always turns into something else. And then it's really confusing for me. So as it stands, like of the feature scripts that we have and of the projects we're about to make, like One is a psychological female-led thriller, kind of a la Gone Girl, and we're shooting that feature in December. We have like a road trip feature, which I wrote to be a thriller, but it's actually like a feel-good coming-of-age movie. So that's really interesting. And then I wrote another like coming-of-age movie that I thought was another like psych thriller, and people are like, it's a dark comedy. I'm like, all right, it's a dark comedy, so it's funny. I don't really know genre-wise.
Yeah, I think just ultimately it's stories that impact us for whatever reason. And I guess we're still figuring out why they impact us. And I think that's kind of a fun question to still look for, right? That's the discovery part of what we're doing.
Like in 15 years, someone will be like, oh, you can see the through line of A2C's film.
Right.
And we'll be like, sure, of course you can.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what
that was
playing.
Intentional, correct.
Speaking of 15 years, I mean, you're shooting some features. You have more coming on this year. What's your guys' goals for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out?
Be able to take a nap once in a while, maybe.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
I guess some of the goals that Connor and I have talked about is this year we're really focused on scaling our company. We really want to like hire people and start bringing in some new voices because we're starting to get these projects attached and like greenlit, which is super exciting for us. But we want to make sure that we grow in the direction of people who really want to learn producing and really want to work with us and like have that same passion and drive and love of deadlines that we have. So that's one of our goals this year. And then also like, I mean, I personally would love, like we've talked about this, we would love to go to some like bigger film festivals next year and kind of do the same thing we did at AFM and like meet people and like get out there and like do the festival circuit, even if we don't have a film out there, just to like go be producers at bigger festivals and see what that is like as well.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we talk about is, as a goal at least, is how to be self-sustaining, you know, in all aspects, not just in the creative one where we can write, we can shoot, we can edit and control the whole process. But I mean, also financially, right? Like how can we make sure the company is going to continue to run and that we can set ourselves up to not have to worry about the grind and we can focus on the creative, you know, and allow the creativity to just kind of flow and be as pure and as kind of unfiltered as possible without the need to worry about the financial engine. So trying to figure out how to set ourselves up for that is interesting. It's tough because like we said, making money in the industry is really hard for whatever reason. So
yeah, sounds like that bigger hurdle everyone's got to try and cross to stay in the game long enough to keep doing it, which is definitely the key. Well, I guess to wrap it up, when you guys are not working, are you still consuming a lot of TV and movies? How do you unwind when you're not living the life of producer, director, writer, actor?
Abby goes on a lot of hikes from what I hear.
Yeah,
Abby, all right.
Hikes, and I play piano pretty avidly. That was like the first creative thing I ever did. I started playing when I was 5, so that's like what I do. I'm terrible. I don't watch TV, which like don't tell people that, but I seriously don't watch any TV. I have no idea what's going on. I do go to the movies a lot though. I go like once a week. So I see every movie that comes out, and then any like indie weird movies like Connor will recommend me, I watch those. Occasionally I'll be like, all right, I want something French weird. I want something gory. Like I will do that. I love a good like 90-minute movie on Canopy that's just so bizarre. I do love it.
Yeah. And I, you know, outside of movies and stuff, I'm a big runner. That's kind of my outlet. I've got a half marathon coming up next week and I have no idea how I'm going to do it. I have not been training over the winter. But beyond that, I'm constantly watching stuff. I mean, I love short films. That's kind of like, you know, our Instagram is, you know, we do a lot of that. And I love art house movies. Like I usually watch 2 movies a day if I can help it. It usually be like one feature, one documentary. That's kind of what I'll go back and forth on. And so, yeah, I'm not as big on TV. I've been getting into it recently, but I'm really slow on the update. Like I just watched Slow Horses and I think they're on season 4 or something. It's like, great show, by the way, if you're on Apple TV.
Yeah, so. Apple TV. Yeah, Gary Oldman, right?
Yeah, Gary Oldman. And Severance. Oh my gosh, Severance is one of my favorite shows that's out right now. So,
yep.
Highly recommend.
What have you watched recently, Abby, that you've loved at the theaters? What stuck with you?
Oh, Tar. That wasn't that recent, but like that that is one of my favorite movies. I loved that movie. I wish I had made that movie, so I felt like angry in a lot of ways because I love classical music. That's such a big part of like who I am, and like my sister's a classical opera singer, and I'm a classical pianist. Just like that is my world. So seeing someone do it through like a really dark psych thriller lens, I just obsessed with that movie. And then this past year, Poor Things. Yorgos is one of my favorite directors.
Yeah, Yorgos is one of her favorites.
If you give someone infinite resources, it's like, let's just see what he does. And that's what he does. It's so fucking fantastic. Like, God, the movie rocks.
Yeah. I know. I
What
watched
about you?
Wonka in theaters this past, like over Christmas, and it made me cry. I thought it was such a beautiful movie, which I was expecting to go in it and like it'd be goofy and, very corporate and studio, but I liked it a lot. So
Timothy, he delivered. He
I
delivered.
know. Yeah. That Timothy Chalamet's got something, eh? That's,
Yep. So someone to watch, right?
Someone to watch. Yeah.
Well, we'll keep up with you guys. We'd love to have you back on again sometime soon, and just before a movie, before a film festival circuit, catch up and see where you guys are going, because you have so much going on with tight deadlines, and two smart people working on something is just going to continue to make good things. And we thank you again for coming on today.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care. Okay, Madison, you've watched some movies. I've watched some movies. Tell me what you caught up with over the last week.
I watched A Promising Young Woman a couple of nights ago.
And this was your first viewing. You've never seen it
This was
before.
my first viewing. Yeah, I remember when I came and visited you in LA a couple of years ago. There was a bunch of signs for it all over the place.
Yep. And what did you think?
It was good. I think I probably had it a little overhyped in my mind for some reason. The chemistry between Carey Mulligan and Bo Burnham just wasn't there for me, and so to me, it just. I mean, I don't know how, like what you've got to do to get on screen chemistry, but they just didn't have it, and so that was like a part of the movie that I just didn't buy. And it was a significant part of the movie, right? It was a big part of her character growth, theoretical character growth, and I was just like, I just kind of want to like look at my phone during this.
Yeah, what did you heard before? I mean, did you find a lot of your friends loved it?
I think, I know Carey Mulligan, and I remember seeing. I mean, I think anytime I go to LA and I see movies on billboards, I'm just like, oh, that must be a really important movie.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just LA street culture. And I feel like me and you had talked about it at one point, and so I was pretty careful not to like look at reviews and stuff beforehand, not to like bias myself. But I don't know. I maybe it was coming from inside the house. I thought that it was going to be better than it was.
Okay, so I love that you've given it years since it came out to watch it. Because I'll say this, I enjoyed it. I liked it. But when it came out, it was, at least in LA, just thought it was the greatest thing that ever came out. And
Wow.
this was like, 'cause it's 2019, I want to say. It was 2020. Came out during the pandemic, December 2020. There was just a lot of time for people to think about things and to talk about things and to get worked up about things. So what I remember people saying is, this is the most important film. It's the best film. It should have won Best Picture. It should have, whatever. Because this was still like, not that it's over, but this was still Me Too era.
Yeah.
And so I had friends telling me this was the most important movie made of the last 20 years. And I was like, pump the brakes. I don't agree with that. Not just, I just think as a movie, it missed on a lot of ways. It missed in a lot of ways, missed on a lot of fronts.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that, I'll be honest, the fact that she wasn't killing these men was
Yes.
a letdown.
It was a
giant letdown. And then I thought, in her little journal, that there was color coordination happening there with her nails and the stuff. Cause like there were so many things that they like just put an inordinate amount of attention on that usually would be like, Chekhov's gun is on the shelf. And once you see the gun, the gun's going to get fired. Yeah. And so I was just like, I was expecting more things to happen or to be more important than they were. And I was just like, you're telling me she's not killing these men? Like, this isn't a revenge fantasy that I wanted it to be. It was just like, she's letting these guys go.
It plays into gender stereotypes to have her let them off easy and not deliver justice. And if this was directed by a horror director, any horror director, it would be these guys get the axe. And Absolutely. That is the message. The message is communicated. There is no gray area. It's like, you do the bad thing, you got to get the axe. That's got to be the lesson here. And
or at the very least, have their lives ruined and not just like let off.
Yeah, like It Follows or other moralistic call to action movies. If you do this, you get something bad in your life. That is how it
Mhm.
goes. It's making it clear, where I think like it's trying to stand opposite of maybe news media or the reality, which is like oftentimes people get off scot-free if they're a Harvard rower or a straight A student, then nothing ever happens to them. My problem was it stayed so close to real while also not being real, of like, could she be doing this and pulling this off? I don't think so. Okay. In that case, go the other way. But it was just like so middling, to your
Yeah.
point. No chemistry with Bo Burnham. I like that they cast all these heartthrobs from the mid 2000s of like, oh,
Yeah.
these are people our age would like and love. Okay.
Yeah.
But it never got to that satisfying end, and I hated the ending. I mean, hated the ending.
Yeah. I mean, I did not expect her to die.
No.
And then to have the guys burn their body. I mean, like, I'm sure great. She, had contingency plans in the eventuality of her death, but like, really? She dies? Like, that's what the message of your story is that it takes a woman's death to hold someone accountable?
If the whole tone of the movie was different, it would have been fine if she died and like, this is just the way it goes. Nothing gets resolved. You should feel anger. And instead it was like, she died and then something happened and a video was released and people probably lost a job.
Yeah.
It just wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And now that you've seen
Yeah.
this and Saltburn, this is why a lot of people now are saying Emerald Fennell should direct, but she should not write her own movies because she's a pretty bad writer. She's a
Mhm.
much better director who has an eye and a vision for doing things. Let
Yeah.
somebody else write the story and maybe clean up the stuff that just is missed.
Yeah, I mean, as far as direction goes, like, great cinematography. Like, I
Yeah.
think the opening scene was fantastic, especially when you're still like, oh, is she going to kill someone? The first moment where she like basically breaks the fourth wall and looks directly in the camera and is like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
that's really powerful." But then it was just kind of a letdown from there because it was like, "Oh, she didn't kill this guy. She just like shocked him."
Yeah, and it was a little bit of like the girl on a on a one-seated rocket of revenge is then like, but the nice funny guy who I remember is here, so I might as well just date him. Like,
Yeah,
it got so far sidetracked. I was like, this doesn't really track. If Kill Bill had Uma Thurman suddenly falling for like, Patrick Dempsey for half the movie, it wouldn't be a great movie with zero, chemistry. So I'm with you there. They missed on some. I mean, it's got a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. So
90%.
again, people thought this was a banner of truth to so much of the world. They were
I
like,
mean, 2020 was a
what
weird
we
year,
need.
so
It was a weird year.
yeah,
So if it was released in 2024 or in 2017, I don't think it would have got the same praise.
yeah,
It just should have been a little stronger. Give us the
yeah,
punch.
yeah. I love Bo Burnham, but I was really bummed out by that.
It was his second best thing in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so you watch Promising Young Woman. Did you finish?
Well, I finished For All Mankind.
And
Really good. I think the pace at which I watched it, like, it's all kind of a fever dream, as it is with when you're binging a show. I think the first two seasons were probably the strongest two seasons, even though it was a little bit of a slow burn. Like, it needed to build some momentum. But yeah, I feel like season 4 started. I think I mentioned before that what I liked so much about some sci-fi movies is that it's humans versus space, and space is a great antagonist. The kind of in the premise of the show, humans have just gotten so good at doing space that space is no longer really a threat. And so in season 4, it's more of not necessarily Cold War, but it's back to kind of infighting between human factions, whether it's the USA or Russia or a private corporation. It's back to more kind of infighting on like who gets the resources, which is interesting. It's just not the same kind of interesting that the first couple of seasons were. And so, I'll be interested to see where they take the show in the future. If they get back to a space is just dangerous sort of narrative, because I think that's it. That's interesting.
do you feel like people are getting burnt out, or do they need to kind of up the ante?
I think they kind of need to up the ante, right? Because I think the arc for season 1 was we need to land on the moon. Season 2 arc was we've got a base on the moon. Season 3 arc was we need to land on Mars. Season 4 arc is we've got a base on Mars. Now we need to capture this asteroid. And, they capture the asteroid that's worth trillions of dollars or whatever. And it's like, okay, now where do we go? Like without upping the ante of like, have you seen The Expanse?
I haven't yet. I've watched 2 episodes. I started. That's Prime, right?
Yeah, it's on Prime.
Yeah.
The Expanse is one of my absolute favorite shows, but it's, very hard sci-fi. Like honestly, For All Mankind could serve as a prequel to, I'm sure it's not going to, but it could serve as kind of a spiritual prequel to The Expanse, just in how they do the hard sci-fi. But I feel like For All Mankind, if they were to, get interesting again, they would need to like discover life on Mars. They need to discover life on an asteroid or something that would just like change the playing field all over again.
Yeah. It makes me wonder with these shows that go on 4 or 5 seasons, especially on streamers and not traditional television. It makes me wonder how much the streaming companies are really willing to keep putting these things on versus saying like, you had a good run, you told enough of the story, goodbye. So we'll see if it gets renewed.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not gonna lie. Stories need endings. I don't think a show should just be continually greenlit just because it can. I think it should only be greenlit if there's a story worth telling. Because I think shows that just keep on going after 13 seasons.
Yeah,
it's hard to be good for that long.
Good is subjective. Yeah, the NCISs and CSIs and everything else with the world. They are forever.
Yeah. So what have you been watching? You finished Silo?
I'm a terrible host. I did not finish Silo yet. That's on my list for tonight. Been busy, went out of town, went to a lake for my fiance's birthday, so we're a little out and about. I did watch a movie last night on Netflix that they picked up. It's one of those weird, like, was in theaters for a hot minute, went away. Finally, someone's picked it up and licensed it, called Queen Pins. So it's Kristen Bell from The Good Place and her co-star from The Good Place, whose name I am not remembering right now. She's also in Barry. Either way, she had an Australian accent in The Good Place. Regardless, the two of them, Paul Walter Hauser, a fantastic young actor. He has a goofy role, a couple sneaky cameos that I won't mention. Joel McHale as just like a loser husband. The role he seems to fit into well. Also, he just doesn't get a lot of roles after Community, right? He's
I know he's in a sitcom called Animal Control. I haven't seen it, but I have heard that like a lot of Community alumni have filtered through, which does not surprise me at all. My question is for a lot of these actors, is it like, are they trying to get bigger roles, or are they just so content to just like have done what they've done and do these smaller things?
Yeah, and it must matter person to person, obviously, but sometimes I'm just watching and I'm like, his name on the poster or billboard or IMDb and his few scenes, he had very little screen time. He must have got a huge check just because he is Joel McHale.
Probably.
So I'm like, okay. Either way, it was a fun movie, not perfect, based on true events, but quite a bit of it was twisted and changed. Just kind of fun. The story of this couple of couponer neighbors who then went from, using coupons and doing hacks to figuring out a kind of a flaw in the system and then just full on committing crime. So just big time crime, and it's really fun.
It's the suburban mom to, crime, white collar, queen pin pipeline.
Well, BB Rexa plays their dark web hacker friend. I love that that's like the new version of the trope that always has to be there. And she calls it pink collar crime. And you know what? That's a great name for it. Pink collar crime.
Yeah.
So it just feels like, it fits in with all these TikTok, YouTube peddling something, a hack that really is just crime. I saw a TikTok the other day where this girl was like, you guys are so dumb if you're not making all this much, hundreds of thousands per month. Here's what I do. And she just literally explains and indicts herself on like real estate fraud and embezzlement and selling within the family and things that are not allowed. And you're like, oh, whoops, girl. That's not a hack. That's going to jail.
That's illegal.
That is illegal. So yeah, the show, I mean, it was a fun movie, not perfect. There's some dumb moments. There's probably too many fart and diarrhea jokes, but
Mhm.
it's still kind of fun. The ending is a little weird. It ends on a note of like, you can be a girl boss even if you're in jail. And you can be a girl boss even if you plan on continuing to commit crime in countries with no extradition. Again, weird with the endings. I'm like, we all just must be a little razzled after COVID of like, this makes sense. No wonder it didn't do great in theaters, and good for Netflix for picking up another fun movie to have on the main page for the next week, and then it'll be
Yeah.
there when someone wants something under 2 hours to watch on a Saturday night.
Yeah. Good Lord.
Good Lord. Well, let's do one last thing before we hop off. I love meaningless holidays or remembrance
Mhm.
days. So this weekend is Spouse Day. Did you know that?
I did not.
Do we even want to know what the background of Spouse Day is? I don't think I do. I think it might just be better we just leave it be.
Yeah. It's probably
Jan-
sexist anyways.
January 26th is National Spouse Day. So I want to talk about just three of our favorite movie spouses. We won't even dip into TV. So who
Cool.
are I have a list of a couple people I've thought of. Don't know if you've got some off the top
No,
of your
I've got
head
a
that
few.
you've
Yeah.
got a few to talk about. Let's start with I'll start with just one of mine. Have you ever seen If Beale Street Could Talk?
No.
Okay. Fantastic movie, very jazzy, very sad. Tish Rivers, played by Kiki Lane, is just one of the best movie spouses of all time. Bonnie, her husband, goes to jail unrightfully, pretty much just racially acted, throws someone in jail when something happens. I'm pretty sure it's a person of color who committed the crime. Anyways, she tries the entire movie, first off, just to win her family over and like him, then to get bail and get him out, then that's not working. She full on travels to Puerto Rico and other countries and places just to get him out and to prove he did not commit this crime. And the whole time is also just like sweet and optimistic and loving, and it's just she does an amazing job, Kiki Lane does, in the role. But it's just a great story of like the lengths someone will go for their spouse completely out of love. Anyways, that takes my number three spot.
That sounds good. My first one is from the movie Past Lives, which just got an Oscar nomination. Would be her husband Arthur, played by John Magaro. You know, if you've seen Past Lives, like what a heart-wrenching story in the first place. I was going through a breakup this summer when I saw it. It was just sobbing when I was watching it because oh my gosh, so sad. But you know, I talked to people who some of my friends who watched this movie, and they were like, I can't believe how they treated her husband. Like it's just so unfair. And I'm just like maybe let's like reorient our imagination around how this husband just trusted his wife enough to let her have this experience, and then trusted that she would come back to him. And I'm just like, what a good, like non-possessive, non-competitive example of a masculine stance in a romantic relationship. Because typically, you know, in rom-coms or whatever, like you got a man in there and there's competition for his wife. He's gonna be a blowhard. He's gonna be competitive. He's probably gonna be an asshole in some way. And you know, Arthur in Past Lives was none of those things. And like, I think it served the movie really well, and I think it served as a really great example of you know, a different kind of masculinity that we can see in movies.
That scene with the two of them in bed talking
Yeah,
was just so good. Where he's
yeah,
kind of talking about, am I the other? Or, you know, he's sad as they were both speaking in their native tongue, and he was just kind of there. And yeah, to your point, the power in just being okay with it and trusting and saying, I know who I am, I know who you are. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Figure it out. That's pretty great.
yeah.
My second one is going to be out of left field, but when's the last time you've seen Jurassic Park 3?
Ooh, a long time ago.
Maybe when it
I
came
have
out.
seen it though.
It's not on many people's rewatch lists, but Paul Kirby, played by William H. Macy, is a great movie spouse. His son goes missing on the island, maybe eaten by dinosaurs. Anyways, he tricks Alan Grant to go take them back. We have all these terrifying moments with the Spinosaurus, which are just horrible. Anyway, he's just a good movie spouse because even though they're separated, he and Tia Leone's character, he's just so calm and understanding and out of his element and trying his best in a world of dinosaurs. And he has some pretty heroic and courageous moments, even though he's still just kind of like a little insurance guy, scared and weebly the whole time. Anyways, just a good movie about, a good movie character who steps up and says, not my playing field, but here we go. I'll try and do my best.
Yeah, that is a left field one. I appreciate that one. My next one is From Everything Everywhere All at Once, would be Ke Huy Quan, who plays Waymond. I don't think we could do better than, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you. Like what a line, especially I feel like, especially, in our generation, you're on TikTok and you see all these couples that are just like seeing the world and doing all the things and like trying to be larger than life. To have a line like that where, the foundation of your relationship could just be boring, and that's okay. It could be boring. It could be banal. It could be mundane. And like, that's okay. Like, that's a good place to be in a relationship. And, and that movie, it's obviously multiversal. And so to have all of these variants of all of them and to just be like, oh, this version of us where we're just like running a laundromat and doing taxes might be one of the better versions of our lives together is really, it's, pretty beautiful to me.
Wow, that's a good one. I haven't thought about that movie in a little while, and that's a fantastic movie spouse. I don't want to go into honorable mentions because there's just too many, so I'm just going to skip to the number one spot. Mine's going to go with Trinity, and we just talked about The Matrix, so I know it's fresh on my mind.
Yes.
But I'm just going to say Trinity, in so many ways, is a fantastic movie spouse. If we even call it spouse, partner, whatever else you want to call it. She is great because she knows from the prophecy who Neo is before he really does. And not only gives him the space, but she's like, I'm not going to waste my time or whatever else, but I know who you are. You figure it out. I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to act with that knowledge, even if you won't. Sacrifice, love, tender care, support, and also just being an absolute badass the whole time, which is great and makes for a great movie. So, especially in the first Matrix, I think Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, has got to be one of my faves.
That was on my list, and I'm glad that you got it.
One of us had to.
Then I'll go to my honorable mention, which, have you seen Princess Mononoke?
I haven't yet.
Okay, well, Princess Mononoke is my favorite Studio Ghibli film. Princess Mononoke, or San and Ashitaka, are not married in the film, but they're basically partners. Yeah. And I think Ashitaka is my pick for greatest spouse because there's this Miyazaki quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but he says something that just because a boy and a girl show up in a story doesn't mean that they need to fall in love with each other. He says, he follows that by saying that if he can portray a story in which a boy and a girl mutually inspire each other to live, that he will maybe have portrayed a more true version of love. And that's what the movie Princess Mononoke is about. It's about San and Ashitaka are inspiring each other to live, to just live life. And they give each other the space to be that. Like Ashitaka never is trying to make San less wild than she is, because she's a wolf princess. And he's not saying like, you need to be less wild. He's just, and then she's not saying you need to like be, she's like, you need to pick a side, because Ashitaka doesn't really pick a side. But that kind of energy of mutually inspiring each other to live is just like, it's fantastic. And it's all throughout Miyazaki's work, that kind of through line.
I was going to say, I've heard that quote so many times, and now I'm like, oh, duh. Miyazaki, the grand storyteller.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because we watched Castle in the Sky, right?
We did at the Alamo Draft House.
Yeah, and they kind of, there's kind of a little bit of a love story, but it's more, it's not an overt romance. It's that these two characters inspire each other to go on their journey, and they both are like mutually keeping each other going.
Yeah, and I like the idea that it doesn't have to be romance. Have you watched Platonic yet on Apple TV?
Yes, I have.
Oh, baby. I mean, you want to talk about, we don't get, to your point, enough of these stories in Western culture of a guy and girl are just having a good time helping each other and talking through the problems. It's so often like, but are they going to have sex? But are they going to end up together? Are they going to have a bunch of kids? It's like, that's not how all of our lives are going, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Princess Mononoke.
Yeah.
Helping each other be better. I had one honorable mention that I wasn't sure about, but because I just saw part of it on a plane recently, it's on my mind, and I want to hear your thoughts. Frodo and Sam.
Oh my gosh.
I think in more ways than one, they are a couple, and it doesn't have to mean that they were, shagging baggins. I just think in so many ways, they are kind of in the same camp of couple, spouse, partner, carrying each other, working with, this heavy weight. It was on my list, and I was like, I don't know if I could talk enough about it. So anyway,
well, I mean, my 2 cents on that is that it's really too bad that we don't see a lot of like tender male friendship.
Yeah.
That male friendship has to be cast in this really like dude bro-y sort of light where we're bonding over sports teams and we're like high-fiving and stuff. And that women can have women on women friendships that like kind of toe the line what we might see as romantic, but they're not. They're just very intimate and platonic friendships, and that men just can't have that. And so to be able to like have Frodo and Sam, like I think that's a fantastic symbolic representation of what like male friendship could be if removed from all the toxicity.
Yeah, I feel like when I've talked to people close to me about, oh, my friend and I did this, did that, I find that I have attracted, maybe you feel the same way, attracted and built a friends group of males who are a little more emotionally developed. I don't know what you want to say. The number of people I'm like, oh my gosh, we saw this movie, we both cried. Or, we were talking about this thing, and as soon as something bad happened in their life, we talked about it before a therapist or anything else. I don't think most guys are doing that. So we don't see it portrayed very often. It's either call me by your name and they got to be hooking up, which again is good to have those stories too, because it happens.
Yeah.
Or it's Predator and it's Arnold and Carl Weathers, just, the most powerful handshake of all time and not an emotion in sight.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, that'll be what we'll have to work on. We're going to write our own Lord of the Rings, and it's just going to be a really tender male story.
Tender male stories, yes.
That's going to be our production company, TMS, Tender Male Story.
TMS. I'm sure so many people will buy into that.
Yep. Well, watch something good for this week. I know next week we're going to have my friend DJ on. We're going to talk about music, and then I'll have Kevin join us for the after portion to talk about the Grammys, because that'll be after next weekend. So
perfect.
Do a little bit of recap, and I have no idea what's happening for the Grammys, what albums are in contention. It's of course got to be Taylor Swift and Beyonce or somebody in there. So get a little ready for some music chat next week, and have a good weekend.
Okay, bye.